What's up, everybody? Shawn back here with another Live to Roll live for you guys. We're back here with another cool show. We've got our friend Nathan on, so we'll do some quick intros, let him introduce himself and all the cool stuff he does. And yeah, let's get into it. So, my name is Shawn. I'm a C5, C6 quad from a snowboarding accident 19 years ago now. And yeah, just living life. So, let's go, Tom.
What's up, everybody? Tom Conaway, C6B quadriplegic for the last 25 wonderful years. Living in beautiful, sunny SoCal. Coming at you. And we'll toss that over to Bobby real quick.
Hey, thanks a lot, Tom. I'm Bobby Rohan, C566 of 34 years, and I'm with these boys living in sunny Southern California. And let's head it over to our guest, Nathan. Take it away.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Nathan Gutierrez. I'm an L1 para. I was born with Spina Bifida. And actually, tomorrow, believe it or not, is my 40th birthday. So I had my
Oh,
disability my entire life.
Happy early birthday.
yeah,
Happy early birthday.
happy early birthday. That's awesome, Nathan.
Yeah. Thank you guys. And also in Southern California. So,
Yeah, we got the whole SoCal crew.
Yeah, we just ran into Nathan. We are hanging out at the sports festival just a week ago or
Yep,
so, 2 weeks ago now.
two,
Time
two.
flies.
It was just a week and a half, I guess, a little over.
Yeah, a week and a
Yeah.
half. We're getting it's only Tuesday, so we're getting I'm getting caught up in the half a week. So Nathan, great to have you on today. We're talking a little bit about growing up with disability. Between the four of us, we got quite the belt of experience, I think, under us in terms of lived experience with disability, and it's a big thing that we talk about on the show. So maybe if you don't mind, we just get started there. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience growing up with spina bifida, using a wheelchair? Have you used a wheelchair all your life? And just, yeah, personally, how it's affected you.
yeah. Thanks, Tom. So,
Um, between,
born 40 years ago tomorrow, Spina Bifida, L1. So, yeah, I've essentially used a wheelchair my entire life. Well, since I was about three, technically, my mom and
yeah,
dad carried me around for a few years of my life.
Right.
That's when I was much younger, much lighter, and couldn't walk, and still can't. But from a very young age, I'd say around 5 or 6 years old, we wanted to give an opportunity for me to walk as much as I could. So we did that by way of walking braces. They were full body; they were up to my chest, and we gave a walker a try. We gave crutches a try. It was really difficult, but it was something that my parents at least wanted to attempt to see if it might be feasible for me long term. So that
yeah,
was my first experience. But we found out pretty quick that using my wheelchair was probably the best way for me to get around in terms of strength, endurance wise, and just how quickly I could get around. And so we figured that the wheelchair was the best option. When I was about nine, we tried it again. Really, my parents really wanted to encourage me that technology had come a bit of a ways at that time, and maybe they had better technology to allow me to walk. So we gave it another try. That time, actually, I had to have surgery to release my behind my knees and in my heel cords as they had stiffened up from being in a chair. And I know you guys can relate to that. So had to get that done, and then I was put in the reciprocal braces. And honestly, to walk about 10 or 12 feet was very, very physically taxing. And so I told my parents at a young age, I was probably 6 or 7 at the time. I said, it's much easier for me in the chair, and it's just something I'd grown accustomed to. So I'd much prefer to be in that chair. And really, there was some battle with my parents, in particular my dad, because he always felt that me walking would be the best thing for me to do in order to be as independent as possible in the world. But I told him, hey, you know what? Technology will evolve over time. I wasn't that eloquent at 6 years old, but I said that you never know what'll happen in the future. Technology would get
yeah.
better, and maybe there'd be another opportunity for me to walk again. But for now, I really feel that the wheelchair would be the best option, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Did your dad
I
find? Did your dad find it like? Did he see you struggle in a chair, and that's why he was pushing the walking so much?
Well, Bobby, that's a good question. No, he felt that if I was going to stand up, I would have the appearance of being more normal. And I know we don't really like using that term, because
No.
really, what is normal? We all have our own level of normalcy. But he felt, I think, that, for good reason, looking back, that he wanted me to fit in as much as possible. And if I had very minimal equipment, I guess you could say, braces, even though they were full length braces, they were very obvious. If I had those as opposed to a wheelchair, that I would be more accepted and I would be able to get around and do more, uh, as opposed to having that wheelchair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a viewpoint of like a
Why?
lot
I
of
mean,
people, uh, especially earlier on years ago. Sorry,
I was just going
Tom,
to
go
say
ahead.
35 years ago, I think, it was a very different time. I mean, it it's interesting because in some ways I feel like we progressed a lot, in other ways maybe not so much. But especially 35 years ago, you can imagine. I mean, that was the viewpoint of a lot of individuals, and I mean, unfortunately, still the viewpoint, I think, of too many individuals is to like what is normal, like what is right, what is best for this individual versus like, you know, society should accept you no matter what. That really shouldn't come into it. But I had a similar experience because I couldn't ambulate following my injury. But early on, I was in a manual chair for, I don't know, like I think 5 or 6 years following like my initial injury, and I struggled in terms of my mobility, distance, fatigue, just like strength wise, getting myself around. I was still very dependent, and switching to a power chair offered me so much more independence and mobility. But that was kind of one of the big questions, or one of the big things that it's like switching to like a bigger, bulkier chair. It like drew so much more attention. It wasn't necessarily, as accessible, as like a manual chair in a lot of situations in the classroom and things like that. But the pros outweighed the cons, in terms of like the independence and the mobility that it allowed me versus, some of these other things to consider. But I think it's a really important conversation to have, early on in your injury. I think regardless of whether you're younger or older, ensuring you're in the right kind of mobility equipment to one enable you to be independent and successful physically, but also feel good about yourself, feel good about, your equipment and stuff. It's a lot of moving pieces, but again, I think a really important conversation to have.
Yeah, Tom, it didn't take my dad very long to see that I was much better off with the wheelchair. And certainly, I mean, we're in chairs, and there's nothing wrong with a chair. If that's what helps you become most independent, to help you achieve the most based upon your ability, then why not? It's okay. It's not, in my opinion, the chair isn't who you are, but it certainly is a part of who.
It's just a
And
tool
if
for life. I mean, right?
it's just a
Mm-hmm.
tool. It's just a tool, exactly. And if people aren't going to accept you because you have to use that tool, then maybe they're not the right person to have in your life. So I'm perfectly fine having my chair. I love my chair, and it helps me as independent as I possibly can.
Did you face any of that in school, with like other students, your peers, like people around your age? Like, was it ever difficult? I mean, I imagine it was difficult at times, but was that, a continuous like thing throughout school or anything like that?
No, not really. At least from seeing me who I was, it really wasn't, especially back in grade school. I can tell you that I have friends to this day that I've known since I was 6 or 7 years old. So you're talking well over 30 years. And I
That's
was
cool.
never the guy or the classmate in the wheelchair. I was just Nathan. And
Yeah.
that's the guy I am today. I'm Nathan. And sure, yes, I was known, and perhaps more well known than some of my other classmates because of the chair, because it's easier to remember the guy in the chair, but I was never really treated any different, at least in grade school. Now, when I got to high and then I got to high school, things started to change because the whole social dynamic changes. And I think that whether you have a disability or not, it that's natural for everybody. You start dating, you start going out, different social events, and then so you have to start taking into consideration How does the chair or a walker or crutches or whatever the tools that you use, how does that factor into things? And it really does provide additional challenges for you or for that individual. So I didn't do a lot of socialization once I got older, school, simply because I didn't drive until I was 19. It's harder for me to get into vehicles. I mean, it's doable, and it was doable back then to get into a vehicle and have a friend break down the chair, put it in the trunk or the back seat or what have you. But it's an additional challenge, and sometimes people just don't want to take the time to learn how to do that, or we have other things we need to worry about, and so those challenges do come up, but it's not possible. But I think in order for me to avoid some of the awkwardness, because, well, let's face it, high school's kind of a weird time for everybody. I think I avoided a lot of that on purpose because I didn't want to make it more challenging for myself and for my peers in general. So, long story short, it's much better now that I'm older and far removed from school.
Yeah.
Was
Uh,
was
Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, was your high school, was it LA County? Was it accessible? Where did it make it like were you in the sense any buildings not able to access and things like that, or was it just
Were you in the normal
green
classroom?
environment?
Did they try to separate you to like a special education environment or anything like that?
Yeah, so I was mainstreamed from regular education or into regular education, starting with second grade full time. First grade, I was a half day or so. Starting second grade, from then on, I was full time mainstreamed. But in terms of my high school, since you asked about that, Bobby, no, it was pretty flat. From what I recall, there was only one area that I couldn't access, and it wasn't even that big of a deal. It was the PE coach's office. Kind of interesting, but it was up a flight of stairs. I'd probably say, I don't know, 8 or 10 stairs or so, and the offices overlooked the locker room, so there really wasn't a need for me to be up there per se.
Yeah,
But everywhere else on campus was flat and accessible. And luckily, my high school was built in the mid '90s, so ADA had already taken place by then, so I didn't have any trouble accessing the rest of the campus.
there you go. Yeah,
I only had one building in my high school that wasn't accessible, and it was the first building that was built for the school way back in the day. But it was funny because there was a U.S. history class. There was a requirement that was only taught on the second floor, and their solution is they made the teacher move classes for that one period that I was in, and it was funny because I never. It's just what you said earlier. Like I never felt I faced any judgment or any like weird feelings from my peers. Honestly, like kids are great. Kids are so welcoming and accepting, especially of other kids. Despite small differences. If anything, like the chair made me like it was like a cool card. But sometimes from teachers, sometimes from administration and stuff, I felt like I would face the judgment or maybe different kind of treatment because one sometimes they were forced to do additional work or go out of their way to go to IEPs and do things that they had to do on top of their normal work, which I understand like is tough. But particularly this instance of like having to move classrooms and stuff, I remember the teacher was really bothered and kind of peeved that he had to do that, and I felt bad, like I felt guilty and weird, and it was like very strange to kind of have that feeling in the midst of all that, particularly in that high school environment too, where you're already kind of confused and insecure and struggling with all that stuff. But I do agree with you that uh, for the most part, like at least my peers were, very very accepting, and it was just like there's Tom. It's not like Tom in the wheelchair or anything. It's there's Tom, which is like really cool and a very positive experience for me growing up, at least.
Well, here's the thing for me. So looking back, as it's been many, um, I wasn't accepting of me, and I
Yeah,
think that played a big part of the issues I had in high school. So it wasn't necessarily my peers; it was me getting in the way of me. And
yeah,
but yet I would project and I would say, well, it's all of them. They don't accept me. It's their fault. It's their problem. But then looking back, and thankfully age and maturity gives you that different perspective. And looking back, I realized I was most of the problem. Now I say most of the problem because there were a few kids who would never accept me, But
Yeah.
no matter who I was or what I did or didn't do, it just they didn't like me, and whether it had anything to do with the disability or not, which is fine. But I did struggle in high school, especially socially, and it was because again my attitude, my demeanor. I was not the most friendly person looking back. I
Yeah.
had a friend back then. His name was Chris, and he's no longer with us, unfortunately. But he had muscular dystrophy. He was in an electric chair, and he would always, he dressed real cool, for the time, and I didn't. I was more the nerdy type, I suppose. But I remember vividly, we would sit in the hallway during lunch, and people would pass by, and they'd smile and say to, guys and girls, it didn't matter, and they would say, hey, what's up, to him, and then they'd look at me, and then they would just move on. And I looked at him one day, and I remember this, and I looked at him and I said, really? Did you see that? And he didn't notice. So I pointed out, I said, I'm sitting right next to you. They acknowledged you and they ignored me. And he said, well, maybe you're the problem because you're not real outgoing. You're not real friendly. You've got this pissed off look on your face, and that scares people. And so to this day, I have to kind of work on my face, but I do a better job. At least I'm a little more aware of it these days.
Yeah.
Even if I was aware of it then, I had the idea that I didn't really care. So if they didn't like what was on my face, it was their problem. But really, I should have learned much earlier on that it was my problem. So, looking back, I really hindered myself from doing more in high school because of the insecurities that I had. And I didn't go to parties. I didn't date. I went on one date in high school. That was my senior prom, or yeah, my senior formal, and didn't go very well. I don't think we have time to get into that story, but um, it did not go very well. And that was my first date I'd ever had, and I realized looking back that again, as the common theme was, I was the problem.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn a lot, but it took me getting many years past that to realize that it was me. And so, if there's anybody out there now watching this that's younger, maybe you're still in high school, you need to really take a look at yourself and figure out what you're doing that may be getting in the way of making friends, of being more social, of participating, whether it's with your peers or your teachers or whomever. It,
Yeah.
it takes it takes two people, as they say. So, and you're the
And
common denominator in all these situations. So maybe it's you.
I was gonna
and I
say
think
one
some
thing.
of that stuff is like life experience, like some of it's that's just growing up, I think it's not so much, exclusive to individual dealing with disability. That's just like added complexity on top of it because I think a lot of, people around that age go through that same experience, that same transformation, or that moment of self-reflection too, where it's like, oh wait, like, what about me? Maybe it's not, the rest of the world. But life experience does tend to teach you, and as you get older. But what were you gonna say, Sean? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was gonna say that like not even in high school, but just even now, out in the world with the disability, I feel like it helps if you are a little bit friendlier. Just smile, say hi to people. You can get a better interaction and like often just get either help, whatever you need. Like I just feel like the interaction's a little bit better, and sometimes if you're off puttish, like Nathan said, like people will also be weirder to you, like if you're kind of keeping to yourself, like I just feel like that's all around in the world. If you just are friendlier and kind of just have that attitude of just like, welcoming others and stuff, then you will also be more
Yeah,
welcome.
if you're open arms, they're
Yeah.
most likely going to be, and some aren't, and that's okay. Did
Right.
you have, besides that guy Chris, did you ever go to support groups or have other friends with disabilities like yourself, or hang out with anybody else that you could talk to, or did you get pretty shunned out of some of that?
Yeah, so I had a group, and I'm still friends with a few people today. I was part of a wheelchair basketball team, and it was an adult team. called the Rolling Chariots, and they don't exist anymore in my hometown, but they had been around since 1979, so that was before I was even born. I joined them when I was about 6, so I was by far the youngest one on the team. I think the next oldest was about 8 years older than me, and so these people were my parents' age or older, and there are a few that aren't around anymore. Unfortunately, we've lost some, but the few that are around, they're literally some of my oldest friends. So I was born in LA, and then I moved to my hometown in the Central Valley when I was about 6. And so I've known these people since I was 6 years old. So what is that, 34 years just about? So they're the ones who really taught me how to become an independent man in a wheelchair. And a couple of them taught me how to drive, at least one day. In fact, I talked to one of them the other day, and I said, "Hey, I've been driving for 21 years. You want to get in the car with me?" And they said, "No, that's okay." Come on, guys, I've been licensed for 21 years. You don't want to get in the car? So that's kind of a joke, but yeah, they were the ones who helped me grow up to learn to become as independent as possible. And we had those difficult conversations as I got older, and I learned from them. Some of them were married, some of them weren't. Some of them are married now, some of them aren't. And I've just really fed off of their experience and taken it to heart and learned from them, because a lot of them paved the road for the way that I've had to take. And so I'm hoping that I'm part of that next generation to where I'm able to pave the road for the younger, people younger than me now, so they don't have to encounter some of those challenges. And so, I'm so fortunate to have them be there for me when I needed them.
So
Yeah.
let's now you do a lot of coaching and stuff like that, right? Because you were coaching basketball at the sports festival, and I know you do some life coaching, but do you also coach basketball and sports as well, like regularly, or still play?
It's been quite a long time since I've actually played wheelchair basketball competitively, and the reason for that is because 14 years ago I had a kidney transplant, and that was after 3 years of dialysis. So because of that, I want to protect the kidney as much as I can, and
Yes.
wheelchair basketball is quite violent at times. And for those of you who say it's a non-contact sport, apparently have not watched it. So I don't play, and I haven't in a long time. And I'll shoot around with people, but when you see me go to the sports festival and things, you really won't see me playing other than shooting hoops for that reason. And I do miss it at times. But I did get into coaching several years ago. Back in 2004, I got in. I was 21 at the time, so I was quite young. But I started coaching high school basketball, so it wasn't wheelchair, it wasn't adaptive.
Cool.
But I got on as a varsity assistant coach at one of the local high schools here. I knew the head coach, and so he let me sit on his staff for a year, and it was a pretty good experience. And then the next year, I took a year off because it was a lot, and I was in school at the time. And then the following year, I got on another staff where I was a junior varsity boys assistant coach at a high school, and I had a lot of fun with that one. That was a great experience. I was really good friends with the head coach, and right after that season, I started not feeling well, or it had been a while, and that's when I found out that my kidneys were failing on me. And then that really started the 3 year journey of going on dialysis and seeking out a transplant. And so I really had to give up playing and coaching for good, for a long time. And then, geez, what was it,
So
about
you
6 years ago, I guess it was, I got back into coaching, at least temporarily, for a couple of years, where I went in and wanted to coach again, and I was calling around the local high schools here, trying to find somebody I knew. And somebody called me back and said, "Hey, well, I don't know any boys coaches or boys coaching opportunities, but there is a girls coaching opportunity." Well, it happened to be at my alma mater, my high school alma mater. And so I called the head coach. Her dad, the varsity head coach, her dad was the mayor of our city at the time, longtime mayor. So I called her. I said, "Hey, your dad can vouch for me because I've worked with him through my job at the time when I was in county government." And so she hired me. She was a varsity coach. So I became the junior varsity head coach for girls. And I did that for 2 years. And let me tell you, it was challenging dealing with a bunch of teenage girls. But to be honest with you, those are the most fun 2 years of my coaching experience, both boys and girls, because I felt like I really made a connection with them. I really felt that they respected me and learned a lot from me. And as of today, as I sit here talking to you, some of them still are in contact with me. They've long graduated from high school, and I told them, I said, hey, you're still in school, so don't contact me on social media or anything until you graduate. And so once they went into college, they reached out to me, and a couple of them have asked me for letters of recommendation, and so it's really cool to maintain that and
Yeah,
to know that I had an impact on their life.
absolutely. I got a question if you mind walking back for a second. Was your kidney failure related to spina bifida, or is it just an unrelated thing? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, well, I think that's a tough question to answer. So yes, in part, I know it was, at least in part. So I had one kidney that was working at about 75%, at least that's what I was told. And then the other kidney was working at about 25% function. And so it was around the time I was 23 when I just remember I started waking up and not feeling well. And it really, if you've never had kidney failure, and I really hope none of you ever have to experience this, it really feels like the flu. So I don't want to give anybody any panic that if you're feeling flu-ish, that's the
Right.
problem. Get diagnosed. But I was feeling perpetually sick, and I would sleep for 10 or 12 hours a night. And I'd get up in the morning, and I couldn't even eat breakfast. I couldn't hold anything down in my stomach at all. And I was losing a lot of weight. And so finally, I was in college at the time. And so finally, my mom, I was living at home, and she said, "Look, I know you're over 18, but I'm taking you to the doctor. You don't really have a choice in this. There's something wrong with you." And it's a good thing she did. I mean, she saved my life. And so I went into the doctor. They did the pat down checkup, as I call it. They just pat you down, listen to your heart, a little bit. They say, "Oh, you're fine. You're in college. You're just dealing with a bunch of stress." And so I went home and I said, "Okay, well, all right." And then a week later, I got a call from the doctor, and they said, "Yeah, you're in stage 5 renal failure." I didn't even know what renal meant. And they said, "No, it's kidney failure, and stage 5 is the absolute worst, and you need to start dialysis today." And so I called my mom and I said, "Well, I need you to come pick me up because I'm not sure it's safe for me to drive to the emergency room." So she came home from work and she picked me up, took me to the emergency room, and from there I started dialysis that night and did that for about 3 years. 3 days a week, 3 hours per treatment. And about half that time I was in college full time. And about halfway through, I almost passed out on my university campus. And I went into my counselor and I said, I can't do this. I'm trying, but I can't. And they said, "Okay, you need to take a break. You need to focus on your health." So I left school for about a year and a half, focused on getting healthy. During that time, I had a lot of insurance battles. I'm sure you guys have some experience with that.
Oh yeah.
And I was able to finally get to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in LA. They had what was called an ABO, and I'm referring to the different blood types, A, B, AB, and O, kidney transplant. And so, we don't have to go into the scientific part of it, but you have to have a compatible blood type in order to have blood transfusions, transplants, things of that nature. And so I didn't have a donor who was compatible. And my dad was the one who was going to get tested, and he did. But it turns out that I could give to him because I was a universal donor, but he was not a universal donor to me. So we did a local newspaper article. This was before Cedars. And thank goodness for Google alerts because somebody in San Francisco, it was a mother and daughter, they're a little bit older than me, the daughter was, they reached out to me and my family and they said, "Hey, you need to get Nathan down to Cedars because they have this program. It's called the ABO Incompatible Kidney Transplant Program. And, if your dad, if his dad is willing and able, you might get it to work." So we contacted Cedars. We went through extensive testing on both of our parts, and we went through the special protocol and saved my life.
Wow.
Wow.
Amazing.
Crazy. I mean, what an amazing journey. The reason I kind of asked about the kidney stuff is my grandpa's on 100% dialysis, and he has been for a couple of years now. And it's heavy, it's hard, it's like a very difficult thing. And I think, I hope nobody has experienced this, but if anybody has or knows anybody that has experienced it, you know just how hard and crazy it is to not only deal with that, but go to school while you're
Yeah,
dealing
that's
with it, the
crazy.
stress of trying to find a transplant and things like that. It's really amazing, Nathan. We're very grateful you're here, man. Going through all that stuff. Do you have to do anything special now that you only have the one kidney?
Not really. I mean, I had to take immunosuppressant medication the rest of my life. So that weight I had lost when I got sick, trust me, I gained it back and then quite a bit more, unfortunately. That's the biggest drawback. One of the side effects of one of the medications is the weight gain, and then the fact that I seem like I'm perpetually hungry. So that's a lifelong battle, unfortunately. But I do tell my doctor when he reminds me I need to lose weight and get in better shape, and I tell him I know, thank you. It's easier said than done. First of all, being in a wheelchair, easier
Yep.
said than done. But I'm trying. I'll do what I can. And sometimes I do fine, and other times I get lazy and I don't do so well. But I tell my doctor, I say, look, I'd rather be in my current state, overweight, and not on dialysis. So, I'm okay. Not to say that I accept or that I'm thrilled about it, but I'll do what I can, but I'm not going to stress about it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, you just do what you can, and yeah, stress. I don't know. I get lost in my stress sometimes, so I'm not gonna go and be a hypocrite and say stress only makes it worse because it is what it is. Sometimes you gotta live in your stress, but like sometimes it isn't always the best thing to put all your energy into stressing out about something you can't really control too much anyways. um Nathan, college, after your high school, if you don't mind us just walking back, I'm just really curious about your journey because I went through a lot of this too with my chair and stuff. It's honestly like what you said, the way was partially paved for me. I had so much support and love from my parents and my siblings and my friends and my community and everything. I just wasn't so much involved in the disabled community growing up, but having just gone through everything that I did, the way that I did, now I want to try to repave the path for others going through it too, and like educate others through my experience, but also talk about the system and figure out how the system can be changed to improve upon this experience for others, because going to like the transition from high school to college for me was insane, insanely good, but also insanely hard. In that, like moving to a different area from Northern California to Southern California, um, the independent living transition, figuring out coordinating healthcare and all that stuff, and then just tackling life, from my particular situation and amidst a lot of change. So I'm just curious about that experience for you. How was it?
Well, first of all, I was thrilled to be out of high school, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Mhm.
It was the toughest 4 years of my life from a social standpoint, and you couldn't pay me enough money to go back and do that again. So
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
there's not an offer out there for that because I would decline it in a heartbeat. Not to say I didn't meet good people there, and I'm still friends with some people from high school, but I don't miss it one bit.
Yeah.
College was better. I went to a junior college right out of high school. I don't think I was ready to move to a university. Just again, socially, academically, all of it. And I'm really glad that I went to the junior college. I know that I think it has kind of a stigma as high school part two, or as I've heard, high school with ashtrays. And
Or
so
I called it
that is
13th grade.
13.
13th grade. Yeah, there is some truth to that. But I did have a professor who was really cool. He was really internationally known by a lot of people. Dr. Chuck Wall. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. Passed away a couple years ago. But he was born. No, he had a condition, and I can't think of it right now. But he had this condition, and when he turned 19, he went completely blind. And so he happened to be a student at the same junior college I was attending. Of course, many years later, and found out that he was the first disabled student on that campus. So he went to college and got a doctorate, and I think about three masters, and a bachelor's degree, three master's degrees, and then a doctorate. And then he did some professional speaking. He spoke to the Pope and Oprah, and I think he worked under a president. And so he did a bunch of stuff. And so he became my communications professor. I sought him out because I'd heard about him. And I joined his class. And I was a little disappointed at the end of the semester that I got a B in his class, given the fact that I feel like I'm a decent speaker. So that was a little bit of a letdown. But I think he did it, looking back, I think he did it to push me, to motivate me to continue to improve, which thankfully I have over the years. But he was a really good mentor to me to help me realize that my disability can be something positive. It didn't have to be a detriment to me, because I think up to that point, and again, I'm not even to the point where my kidneys had failed yet. This was right before that. So, up to that point, it was still all about, I'm in this chair, it sucks. Nobody likes me. Nobody's ever going to accept me. And he said, Nathan, there's so much life having a disability. And when I learned his entire story, I thought, all right, this guy's onto something. And so he was the one, and I know you guys know this about me, that I've done some professional speaking and so forth. He was the very first one to push me in that direction. And without him, honestly, I probably wouldn't be sitting here in this interview with you right now. And so
Yeah.
that was 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And he would take time out of his schedule after class, once or twice a week. He was married, by the way, no kids. He couldn't have kids because his condition was genetic, unfortunately. But he would stay after class, and we'd sit there for an hour and a half, just talking sometimes. And he would answer any questions I had. He would encourage me, and really played a big role in my life. And so in fact, one of my very first speaking engagements was a TEDx talk, and it was really cool because I got to share the stage with him at that event. And so that was probably one of the most special moments in my life that I got to do that. So really, I'm talking to you guys because of him. So it goes all the way back to that point in my life. But anyway, moving on with college, it was a much better experience. I think people at that point, hey, we need to grow up. Even though I'm at a junior college, I think people started to see me for who I was and not the chair necessarily. And there were a few that I couldn't even tell you their names or who they were, that didn't accept me. But again, that's okay, and I know all of us face that today. I mean, everybody does, whether you have a disability or not. So, sorry,
True.
there's siren in the background.
You're good.
But the experience was much better. People started to see me for who I was, and so I'd be in small study groups, or we'd work together in class. I still didn't go out a whole lot. I was never a drinker, and I'm not now, but so I never really went out socially, other than maybe a game on campus or something. I worked in the athletic department both at the junior college and then again at the university, so that kept me quite busy. And so I was socializing with a lot of the athletes, a lot of the support staff. So those were really my groups of friends for the most part in college. But again, so much better than high school.
Yeah. Well, shout out junior colleges, because I went to a JC right out of high school too. Just like you, like one, I wasn't ready, like physically, like independence wise and stuff. Like I just had some stuff I needed to figure out before like I could make that transition. And that 2 year cushion right after high school, like it transformed me. It transformed my life. It changed my whole path. It, like led me to new passions that, I didn't even know I had, in terms of, like personal, professional, stuff that I wanted to pursue, but also meeting some really inspiring teachers, like you said too, that helped, like mentor me and kind of set me on my path, and help just teach me a lot outside of just what they were teaching in the classroom too. So anybody who maybe does like hear that stigma about JCs and stuff, save yourself the money. Go to a junior college, like get the same caliber education and stuff, but a more intimate, more personal kind, because you're not going to get that similar connection at university, not as often, because there's just so many more students, and it's a little less personal in terms of like connecting with the teachers and stuff like that. So I had a very similar experience. I just wanted to mention that because really reverberated with me. And yeah, no, it's amazing. College is a very difficult but also like very transformative period for people, especially if you're dealing with a disability. But at least nowadays, in like my personal experience, everything was so accommodating. I feel like the social aspect was even easier too because I was just taking classes and stuff that I got to pick and things that were I was passionate about and had similar interests with my peers too. So I think that helps make the social element easier because you're just automatically kind of intermingling with people that are vibing with what you're studying and what you're all pursuing. Um, but how was that in terms of like disability resources and just accessibility throughout your college experience?
Well, the junior college is quite old, so it's built on a hill, and so that part was challenging. I had classes that were on the second floor sometimes, and they had the old antiquated elevator lift, the one that has the enclosure where they close the door behind you, and then you hope and pray
Mhm.
that it gets up there without getting stuck. So
I
I
have
went through
nightmares
that.
about those lifts. I have
I did
nightmares
not.
about that.
Went through that. Had one in the gym too, which is interesting. So the gym, because I love basketball, so I was always trying to help out the men's and women's teams at the junior college. And so you'd go into the gym and you'd be looking down at the entire floor. It was a couple of stories, and so well maybe not that much, but I'd have to take an elevator down to the floor. And again, it was one of those enclosures, and I actually got stuck in it once, and that was not a pleasant experience. I wasn't alone, thankfully, and it wasn't late at night or anything, but it still wasn't pleasant. And then I remember in the humanities building in another part of the campus, I did get stuck again, and it was a night class. And I don't think people knew right away that I was stuck. So it took a little while until people realized I was missing. But they came and found me and got me out, so it was fine. And that's experiences like that that really get you to appreciate what you're able to do. And those experiences build character, shall we say. So I did have those. Again, because the school was on a hill, sometimes the accessible parking was not truly accessible because if you're parked on an incline, not really sure how accessible you can consider that. That wasn't always the case, but that did happen at times. The university, however, because it was newer, it was built in the early 70s, so still older, but it was flat. It was quite flat. And I don't recall being in an area on that campus that I couldn't access. So that was, from an accessibility standpoint, the university was much better.
And I mean nowadays too, especially the at public schools, they do a pretty good job of making sure that accessible accommodations are made and buildings are more to spec and you're not dealing with such unreliable elevators and stuff. I mean certainly in some places for sure, but at least out here in Cali, most of the education uh, buildings and stuff are pretty good. All right, Nathan. Well, nowadays, after college, what do you do? I know you say that you do some, you've done some professional public speaking. I'm kind of curious, is that TED Talk like online somewhere? I'd love to check it out if it is.
Yeah, so I've actually done two TED Talks. The
Okay,
first one, and
nice.
I'm quite disappointed in this. The very first one, where I had it with my old college professor, they didn't record it, so
Oh.
it's nowhere to be found. And I was not happy because I thought that was a good one, and it was special because it was with my professor. And yeah, so you can find that. So the second one is recorded and is on YouTube. So if you just Google my name, you can find it. It's TEDx Bountiful. That's Bountiful, Utah, and that was done in 2012. So that's out there, and I'm a much better professional speaker than I was then. So if you watch it with a grain of salt. But it was still a lot of fun, and I'm friends with a lot of the speakers from that event to this day. But even before that, if I may, I just want to go back and say that during my university years, I was working in the athletic department. I worked on special projects. sports marketing, because that was the direction I thought my career was going to go. So my degree, my undergraduate degree, is in business administration with a concentration in sports management. So I wanted to go into college and professional sports either as an athletic director, or in professional sports, I wanted to be a vice president or a general manager, something like that. And interestingly enough, my first job out of high school, so I'm going back a little further, was with the local hockey team. And honestly, I still don't know a whole lot about hockey, so I'm not sure how I landed that, but it was still a good experience. So really, that's what got me going into the sports arena. And then in college, I did the sports marketing thing, and then I got into high school basketball coaching. So I coached at three different high schools. The first two with the boys programs, started with the varsity boys, and then the junior varsity boys at the second school. And then, like I said, the last coaching job I had was with the girls. And then in terms of other jobs I've had, I've worked for county government in workforce development. And that's a fancy term for saying I help people get jobs. And but it was a government job, and so I did resume development. I help people through interview skills. I help them build that skill up. No, that does not mean that I've gotten a job from every interview I've ever attended. Kind of interesting, but it is what it is. But I did get better writing resumes. And then became an analyst. So I was in charge of putting programs together to help kids go back to school, those who had dropped out for one reason or another. And then the reason we wanted to get them back into school was to help them get through training programs so they could get decent jobs. So my job was not to work with the kids directly, but to facilitate the program behind the scenes. So it was all about budget management. It was about designing the programs, making sure that the training providers, those programs, were running the way they were supposed to in accordance with federal, state, and local law in terms of workforce development. And then from there, I moved over to city government, where I've worked on ADA initiatives. I've worked on a lot of so ADA, and I'm doing some Title VI, and then I've also done some internal things. So I've done security programs.
What's
I've
Title
worked with
Six?
our. What's that?
What's Title Six?
So Title VI of the Civil Rights Act is it's dealing with discrimination, race, disability, all of those things. And so, so Title VI disability. So I've done the Youth Commission. So their job is to find a project that really affects youth in the community every year. And so that's one thing I facilitate. A bunch of different things in the community, both in the community that's community facing and internally. Worked on budgets, worked on creating policy, analyzing legislative procedures and laws that affect our local economy, our local programs. So quite a bit. And then my passion, though, is, of course, the professional speaking and coaching people, especially those with spina bifida, spinal cord injury, and mobility disabilities, because, well, I live with it, so why not help people through it? So that's my own thing that I like to do, and that's one thing I want to do full time. I actually do have a professional speaker certification. One of my mentor is one of the highest grossing professional speakers in the world, and Steve Siebold. And so I learned a lot of those skills from him, and it allows me to come and do interviews like what we're doing now with you guys. So I'm not nervous or anything. The cool thing that
you are incredibly well spoken, Nathan. So your hard work is definitely gone into shows in your speaking, and your mentors have certainly maybe take a little bit of credit, but for teaching you their ways. But you speak really well, so I just wanted to.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I did get my start in Toastmasters, so I do want to give a shout out to Toastmasters International. If you
Toastmaster?
They give you the good foundation to become a decent speaker. It helps you deal with your nerves. It helps you communicate clearly, and it's a good place to start. Now, I don't know if it's going to necessarily get you to be a paid professional speaker on the big stages. I know a few people who have done it, but generally most of those people have much more advanced training. So I've really put myself through more of those advanced trainings in order to become where I am today. And I'm not even close to being one of the best speakers out there at all. So I don't pretend to be.
Now, forgive me if I'm mistaken, but I think when we were speaking at the Sports Fest, you're going back to school, right?
I made the decision recently that I'm going to go back and get my MBA. Yes.
Okay,
So I figured,
awesome.
hey, starting a new decade of
Congratulations.
life, might as well do something drastic and
Yeah,
go back to school. So
yeah,
it's something I've wanted to do for a long time, and it's not something anybody's forced me to do or asked me about it. It's just something I've always had in the back of my mind. And I took a break from school for a long time because it did take me, 9 years to get my bachelor's degree because of all the things I had to deal with my kidneys and the transplant and recovery and all of that. So I figured, well, I better start on my MBA before I get too much older. So I'm doing that hopefully here in the next couple of months. I've got a couple of other things I need to take care of personally, but yeah, I'll be starting that. And thankfully, it's an online program, and it's a program that will allow me to accelerate as quickly as I want, or go at my own pace if I need to slow down a bit.
yeah.
That's cool.
And
You know,
I always say it's like journey before destination, like regardless of how long it takes or the path that you take to get there, as long as you're, working towards something and it makes you feel good and you're benefiting from it, that's all that matters. So for anybody who, else is like, because I know it's just a common thing. If going back to school, it takes you longer. If you can't go to, take the same load as, other people, like that's totally fine, as long as you're doing something that, is benefiting you and you feel good about. That's all that matters at the end of the day, I think. Sorry, Bobby,
Yeah,
go
and
ahead.
I'm doing this for me. I'm not even doing it for more money or another credential to use for speaking. I mean, that'll be a nice benefit, but I'm not doing it for solely for that purpose. I'm doing it because I want to, and I want to challenge myself and prove to myself that I can do it.
Yeah,
quick,
absolutely.
when you talked about some of the legislation stuff you do and the Title VI, what area uh, are you focused on, or do you help out the most? Is it LA County, or what county are you doing
No,
that
so
kind
it's
of work?
yeah, so it's Kern County, um,
Current.
Bakersfield, Kern,
Yeah.
that area. So yeah, so I'm basically between halfway between LA and the Bay Area. So
Okay.
I'm almost smack dab in the middle of the state, and so that's the area.
Okay.
Shout out Kern
Yeah.
County. My parents live in Inyo, Kern, so
Mhm.
it's like Inyo. It's weirdly far away from Bakersfield. You say Kern County though. It's like, ooh, mom and dad. So shout out.
Um,
Uh,
And
I
are
did.
you also quick question, Tom? Just are you also a life coach? So when you say you're doing coaching, are you doing life coaching? Is that the approach that you use, or just life experience kind of coaching?
Both. It's a good mixture of both. So
Okay.
I'm just getting started with it. It's something that I've had in my mind for some time. I just needed to formalize it. And so it's called Wheel Life Coaching. And because I figured that was kind of a cool name to use considering I'm in a wheelchair. So Wheel Life Coaching. And that's two L's, not just one. So it's wheellifecoaching.com in case you want to check out my website. So I haven't taken on clients yet, but I'm getting very close. So really what I want to do is I want to help people with spina bifida mobility disabilities and spinal cord injuries, help them figure out how they can live life independently, even if they don't know where to start. So it's really for beginners. So whether somebody's been injured, a week ago, or if they've been injured for 20 years, if they need assistance trying to figure out how to navigate the system, as we call it, I help them do that. Now, I don't pretend to have all the answers, and I don't pretend to know every individual situation because clearly I don't. I don't think any one individual does. But if I can help people with their mindset first and foremost, and then help them figure out how to navigate their own individual barriers that they face, because let's face it, I mean, there's four of us on that call, and we all have different backgrounds, different stories, different disabilities, different abilities. So each one of us will have to have our own game plan, so to speak. To let's say we're all going for the same thing, the difference between all four of us will require different plans and different resources. So it's not a magic one plan fits all, because we're all different. And I think that's what a lot of these services out there today try and do, is that, hey, we have one plan, it'll fit you like a glove. No, it won't, because my situation may call for something different than the plan that you're giving me. So what I like to do is help people on an individual or very small group basis who might have similar stories, similar situations, disabilities, and so forth. So I can help more than one person at a time. But really, it really depends on the individual and what their background and what their story is.
Um, my my mom said in the chat, looking for a partner. She's all about trying to do just what you kind of described, is helping guide people on a path. Just like what you said, everyone's lived experience is so nuanced. I mean, we face a lot of the same goals, but the way that we tackle them, is very dependent on our own individual selves and our lives and our circumstances, and like what's going on around us, and the obstacles that every individual faces. So it's really amazing. We'll make sure to include that link in the description if anybody does want to check out the website, Real Life Coaching. And yeah, no, it's super amazing. I do want to take a second. We are approaching the end of it. I want to get you out of here on time. We do got to shout out our sponsors real quick. And then I got one more question for you just to kind of wrap up the pod. But Shawn, you mind throwing up the graphic for me real quick?
Yeah.
Big shout out to Mobility Professionals. They are your mobility solution. If you are lucky enough to be in the beautiful Southern California area, they will help you out with anything and everything you need surrounding wheelchairs or any other related mobility equipment. They have an incredible team that is of the community and for the community, and will do a lot of work and take a lot of the stress in terms of helping you understand the process and getting you the right equipment the first time around, making sure you're independent, feeling good, and as healthy and happy as possible with your equipment, and are able to live your life. And their sister company is Urology Professionals. They are a national company, so anywhere in the beautiful United States of America, if you find yourself in need of catheters and having a hard time getting them, well, make sure to go over to the Urology Professionals, give them a call, go to their website, and relax as your problems melt away, because they will work with your insurance to help you understand your situation and get you your catheters. They'll send you samples, they'll send you stuff to help bridge the gap if you are in transitioning between companies, or if you're just in need of supplies until you can get the insurance stuff figured out. But they have an incredible team that will help navigate that for you, help you understand the complex nature of it, and most importantly, get you your supplies with little work on your part as possible, because they'll help take over and get you what you need. So go and show them some love. Make sure to let them know LiveDrill sent you if you are coming from here. And we appreciate our sponsors. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
If I add to that, Tom, I'll give you a little extra plug for them, for your sponsors. Don
sure.
and his team, awesome. They are really awesome. I use them too. They never cease to amaze me on how quickly they get me what I need. A couple of weeks ago, I said, "Hey, I'm running low on some supplies. I need you to send me some stuff, and I need it like tomorrow, maybe 2 days if you can." And they were on the ball. So I love those
Yeah.
guys.
And
And
our
Don,
friend Kelly in the chat said the same thing. He took care of his stuff in 24 hours. So big shout out to Urology Professionals and their whole team too.
absolutely.
Hey, Tom, before you ask your question, just real quick, Nathan, in Toastmasters, how far have you gotten? Are you a DTM?
Oh, I haven't heard anybody ask me about a DTM in a while. So no, I'm far from a DTM. You know what? They've changed things. So I was in Toastmasters, geez, from 2010 to 2014 or so, and I was a bit of ways. It does take time to get your DTM, and for those of you who don't know, that's called the Distinguished Toastmaster. That's as high as you can go. So no, I was a bit of ways, but I did serve in various offices, various capacities, and I was the area governor at one point. So I did oversee multiple clubs, and that's part of getting your DTM. And then just because of work obligations, I didn't have a chance to attend a lot of the meetings, so I left Toastmasters for a period of time. And then I recently rejoined again about 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago now. And so I'm still learning how the new process works a little bit. They're a good group to learn just basic speaking if you're not familiar with it or you get nervous.
Yeah. I have everything except area governor, or I just won't do that. I have everything, and I'm a gold, and I just won't do the DTM part. I'm just like, that's all right. I don't need to be in there. I'm busy enough. I
Well,
don't
I
need to
think
be
area director now. That's one of the many changes. It's not area governor, area director. So yeah.
director. Yeah.
I love speaking. My only like formal education in it though is one class in my junior college. It was a speech class, and I got an A. Like I did really well, and I remember like going up and doing like extemporaneous speaking and stuff like that. And I don't know, like my dad and my mom, they gave me the gift of gab. They've been chatting my head off my whole life, so I kind of just got it by proxy of them. But
Well,
no, I'm really
Tom,
fascinated with public
you're
speaking.
you're just bragging because you got an A and Nathan got a B.
Hey,
No,
I wasn't, being educated under, like this premier, like world-renowned speaker, working under presidents and stuff like that. So maybe it was a little lower caliber, but hey, I did work hard in the class. So.
well,
um,
Tom, hey,
let me
open.
go ahead.
Let's do a duo speaking engagement one of these days.
Yeah, I love that, Nathan. We're definitely gonna have to talk and stay in touch. Shawn and I have been talking about that for like Live to Roll and stuff. Maybe when we're on the road at the Abilities Expos, adding like a speaking element to it because that's kind of what we do on the pod is we speak. But no, I'd love to talk to you about that, Nathan, for sure, and follow up.
Yeah, if there's anything I can
Um,
do to help you guys develop that, let me know.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll definitely be talking to you. Big shout out to everybody in the chat. Thank you, the whole Live Troll fam. Thank you guys so much for being here. Kelly, Mama Conaway, Roy, Peter. I know there's, I think, yeah, Julius. Um, First time seeing you here, dude. Thank you for joining, everybody. We appreciate you guys so much for chatting alongside of us. Helping keep the conversation going and just hanging out and being here and showing the love and support. That's why we do it. We love you guys. So big shout out to the whole Live Troll fam. Nathan, I kind of like to end these episodes, especially ones where we're kind of hearing so many personal stories and stuff. Any advice? Well, you kind of been giving advice the whole time, but if you can think of any particular advice for any individuals maybe dealing with disability early on, or just been dealing with it for a long time, but maybe find themselves struggling, at some of the obstacles ahead of them. You got any advice for our anybody in our audience?
Yeah, great question, Tom. Get connected. Get connected with people. There's so many people out there who know what you're going through, who can empathize. They may not know your exact situation, but they can empathize and be a listening ear for you because even if it's just one thing that they may be able to help you with or relate to, that could be the biggest change in your world right now. So, you can't do this alone. You can't do it alone very well. The other thing, and this is similar, if you're a person of faith, I'm outspoken Christian, and it's okay if you're not. I'm friends with people from all different backgrounds. But if you're a person of faith, get involved in your faith community. And even if they don't have a disability or, the only connection they have to someone with a disability is grandma or grandpa, that's okay. But you need that community. It is so, so important to have people who will at least be a listening ear, if nothing else. Even if they don't directly understand your story, they at least can sit there and listen and be a friend. We all need that so much, and that's why I love what you guys do. That's why I love so much. I love the Wheelchair Sports Festival with the Triumph Foundation. Uh, I know I know Mobility Professionals is also a sponsor of theirs, so another shout out there for you, Don.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the different events around the United States. God, I wish I could get to more. The Abilities Expo is awesome. I mean, that's the biggest place you're going to find for people with disabilities. So if you haven't been, you need to go. You need to make that a priority. It's in a very large city close to you. Find a way to get there. Ask people to give you a ride, to help you with a flight, whatever you need to do. Just get there, get connected. That would be
Yep,
my advice.
Yeah, they just
that's
had one last
amazing.
weekend in New York, New Jersey. So they're and we'll be in Chicago next month at the end of the month. So yeah, come out to anyone that's near you. They're all over the country.
And not everyone is able to, physically go, and especially complications with transportation and mobility equipment, things like that. And there's one of the reasons why we have this beautiful community online is to connect with each other online, and anywhere around the world. You don't got to leave even the comfort of your own room to connect with us and come and hang out, and chat and stuff. And we have a great amazing group here. And just like echo what Nathan said, connecting to the disabled community, you know 16, 17 years after being, a quadriplegic, it changed and transformed my life in an infinite number of positive ways. I can't even tell you. Just the friendships and what I've learned and the experiences and the opportunities and everything. It's just so transformed my life in such a positive way, just from connecting, like Nathan said. So get connected. Connect with us. We'll connect you with other people, and yeah, just get connected. We love all you guys. You
Yeah. Yeah, you
want to
guys,
shout
thank
out?
everybody for watching. What's that?
Want to shout out some shows for Thursday?
Yeah, so
What do we
well
got
actually
coming
oops,
up?
on one. We got Tom coming up tomorrow with some gaming, I think, if he's
Yeah, come check it out. Wednesday night, 5 p.m. Baby, it's
hang
happening.
out.
We're gonna have the whole quad squad out, hanging out, playing some games. So if you want to come and hang out, we got like a bunch of us online. We're all playing together, having a good time. So come and hang out
And then
if
we
that's
got
your thing.
yeah, no, it's a fun time. And then we got Bobby on Thursday with Rolling Over the Hill, doing another show. I think Robert's out and Luis will be help filling in, the guest hosting. And then next Thursday we'll have the women's show on with Brianna. Will be back with the women, and we'll be back every Tuesday 3:30 with a new live. So follow, subscribe, click that little bell so you get the notifications. And thank you all for watching. We appreciate you guys. Nathan, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you so much,
Thank
And
Nathan.
you, Nathan. Appreciate you,
we'll
You guys
man.
we'll see you guys next time. Let's roll, everyone.
Take care.